And my biggest piece of advice now, looking back, is if you have to go into a room fighting, don't walk into that room.
Hi, welcome to Okayish Advice. I'm your host, Mila Martinico. And is it the best advice? Probably not. But it's advice, and we've been through it, so it's unsolicited. So today we have Riley.
Hi.
Which everybody knows I was on her podcast. And since our topic today is all about birth, I knew that I had to have you.
My favorite subject to talk about.
Like literally.
For hours. I could.
Yeah. And so I was like, obviously, like we have to have Riley on because this is my little series about like parenting.
Yeah, motherhood in general.
Motherhood, yeah. So, and birth, is what makes you a mother. So it's so important. And I feel like it's something that's always like looked over. Yeah, isn't it though?
Yeah.
Yeah, looked over. That's a good way to say it. Sorry. I'm tired. Okay. My first question, or wait, no. I forgot to do the introduction, really.
No, you didn't.
I didn't?
No, you said Okayish podcast. Is that the best advice? Not really.
No, but the introduction about you.
Oh.
So, like, you're my friend, obviously.
Yeah.
And you also had, like, traumatic birth experience.
Yes.
So, like, that. And I know that you wanted to kind of just, give a disclaimer out there about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, like I had my first son in 2020, which was just a tumultuous time to give birth. And because it was my first baby, I thought I had to go to the hospital. And I'm kind of on the crunchier side, so I've always wanted to have a home birth. And so, but because of a few different things, family-wise, with my husband, nobody was comfortable with me staying home. And so I thought I had to go to the hospital. And I switched providers 4 times with my first son.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I ended up going to the hospital, and I was in a birthing center in the hospital, but it just was not a good thing. And I will probably go into a little bit more later, but it ended up being a very traumatic experience. And I then went on to have my second son, and I had my home birth. It was redemptive. It was beautiful. I had my CPM. It was amazing. So I just wanted to put a disclaimer out there that I'm going to be coming from a crunchier perspective. Yeah. And that's not for everyone. And if that's not what you want, that is totally fine.
Yeah.
And this is probably not the advice for you then.
Yeah.
With some of the things I'll be talking about. But there's no shame. There's no judgment. My biggest thing is that everyone has the right to choose what they want for their birth, and that they feel empowered to make decisions, and that they get fully informed consent about everything. And that's kind of what I'm going to be harping on a little bit. Yeah. But I just really want people to know that if this is if we don't align, that is totally fine, and there's no shame or judgment. I at least hope you get something out of what I have to say about going in fully empowered and informed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that was actually put so beautifully. I think one of the biggest things in any kind of situation, whether, birth, medical, whatever, we all need to make sure that we have all of the information and that we are informed. I, of course, I've been through it with my births. And so I will also be coming from, a more natural place. And, there is, again, with this birth right now, I have to have a cesarean. So, but there's a way to do that in a way that's redemptive. And that's been my biggest thing is I want to have this redemptive birth. That's what God's put on my heart. And so for whoever is listening, my prayer for you is that wherever God leads you, my dog, my God.
Dolly just wants to be a part of the show.
She does. She's like, please make me part of this. She just wants love. She's obsessed with me. But wherever God leads you to birth, I just pray that you have the best experience possible, and that you are safe, and that, your baby is alive and healthy and whole and well. And that's where my heart is. And, if people come after me, like, oh, well, they're always after me. I really don't care. So, anyways, our first question from a viewer is, I am pregnant and planning my birth. What are your top suggestions that I add to my birth plan?
I love this question, but I'm actually going to go before the birth plan for a second because I have learned, I used to be about the birth plan so much. I had a 20-page birth plan for my first son.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was in a binder. The nurses loved me, obviously. They did not.
Oh my God. I love how extra you are, though.
I felt like I had to be, though, because like I mentioned earlier, I did not want to give birth at a hospital. And my biggest piece of advice now, looking back, is if you have to go into a room fighting, don't walk into that room.
Wow.
And what I learned from that experience, I mean, I changed providers 4 times, and I still was not supported. And so what I learned from that experience is you are not actually obligated to commit to a provider right away in the beginning. You are allowed to interview them. You are allowed to go to appointments and ask them questions and make sure that they are someone that you feel supported by, that is going to completely and totally back you up on whatever decision you make and give you fully informed consent.
Yes.
And so what I say before you even think about a birth plan is go and interview people, ask around, ask questions, make sure that you feel safe in your body with them just in an appointment like that, and ask them questions like, how would you respond if I told you no when I'm in the middle of labor? How would you respond if are you prepared to support me and stand by me if I decline this, and this? And ask them those questions and see their response. Feel how it feels in your body when you're talking to them and telling them these things.
Yeah.
I feel like researching before you get pregnant, if not, because sometimes it's not planned or sometimes that's just not on the mind, taking those first couple of months to research, you do not have to commit to anyone in the beginning. And obviously insurance makes that a little bit of a complicated thing sometimes.
Right.
But
go lay down. Sorry, interruption by Dolly.
No, you're fine. It does not mean you can always change. You can always say no. I don't care if you're 37 weeks and you don't feel safe with your provider all of a sudden. You are allowed to say no. Yeah. You are in that birth room, laboring, if you're at a hospital or a birth center or whatever, or even in your home.
Yeah.
And suddenly you don't feel safe with someone on your birth team. You are allowed to say, I need you to leave, because the most important thing your body needs is to feel safe.
Dude.
Whether you're having...
Beautiful.
Whether you have the epidural, whether you're going completely unmedicated, whether you're having a cesarean, you need to feel safe.
Yeah.
Because the literal chemical makeup of your hormones, that is helping get that baby out. And then even after a cesarean, the way your hormones are working to heal postpartum and to provide your baby everything that they need for their immune system for the first 6 months, it is vital that you feel safe.
Yeah.
So that is my biggest piece of advice is please, please, please prioritize that. And then you can make your list of everything. And if you have a if you start off like that, if you start off praying and asking God for wisdom on who your provider is supposed to be, which is such a trivial thing in some concepts, but
but it's so
we
huge.
should be asking, God made that baby, created that baby. And now he can't give you the provider you need. He totally can. And so when I started my pregnancy off with my second, praying about who my provider needed to be and interviewing people, completely changed the game compared to my first, because I was so living in fear with my first. Yeah. And it translated throughout my entire pregnancy and then into my birth and into postpartum. And it's totally not my fault, and I will own that. What happened to me, the providers were negligent, and they were totally out of line and even admitted it. But I still allowed fear to rule that entire pregnancy experience, and it totally translated through the whole thing. So I really encourage you to start off strong, because it really does make a huge difference in making sure that your partner is on board with everything too, that you're not having arguments in the delivery room or postpartum, or like they don't feel like they have a voice. Like making sure that they feel like they can voice themselves and their opinions to your provider is vital too, because they might have to make decisions for you or communicate if heaven forbid something goes wrong, and they need to know that their voice matters to that provider, and you need to make sure that your provider is going to listen to your partner as well. Like that is so important. So opening up those lines of communication, because then if you're starting off strong, like if you decide to say no to the eye ointment, and you decide to say no to vitamin K, and you decide to say no to Pitocin or no to a Foley bulb or whatever it is that you don't want in an intervention that you don't want, which you totally get to make decisions about. In my case, I didn't want any of it, and that wasn't respected. So if I had just started with a provider that respected me when I said no, then it really wouldn't matter what was on that birth list, because it'll just come up as it comes up. They want to give you the vitamin K injection now, you say no. They want to give you Pitocin post-birth to manage bleeding, which actually caused me to hemorrhage. You can say no, and you know that they're not going to go behind your back and do it anyway, like they did with me. So, that's just really, really important to start off with, because then your birth plan is just kind of whatever you want it to be, and you get to go in just holding it loosely of like, God, lead this birth. And like, one of the things that I did with my second was I prayed about how I wanted to feel during the birth rather than exactly how I wanted it to go, because birth is unpredictable. It's never going to go the way that you want it to go. It's not going to be, I go into labor at this point, my water breaks at this point, contractions go at this point, and I push at this point.
Textbook birth.
It's never going to happen. So just put your expectations to the side. I'm a total fan of having desires and like a general idea of how you want things to go, because I think that's really beautiful. The people that say don't ever have a birth plan, I don't think that's fair either, because I think it's totally okay to want to have desires around your birth. But if you at least set the like checklist to the side and just say, God, I want to feel peace. I want to feel held as I enter into labor land, which is totally real, and walk through this portal of where heaven and earth are meeting for this new child to come into the world. Like, I want to feel you there, and I want to know that I am safe and protected. And going into a birth in that way, it could not have been more beautiful or more redemptive. Not everything happened the way I wanted it to. I didn't get to give birth in my birth pool like I wanted to. I gave birth on the bed with Holden. But I still felt safe, and I felt protected. And God literally just, like, it was, like, I didn't even have to push. He just came out.
That's amazing.
It was incredible. And that was those things that I prayed for, and I just set them before the feet of God and just said, this is what I just want to do this with you. And I did not do that with my first. And I really think that things would have gone so much more different if I had. So I hope that answers the question.
That was so beautiful. Oh my God. Yeah, gosh, there's like so many things that when you were talking, like that was like running through my mind. And I think that my biggest issue with all of my births, because really like all of my births were like birth rapes. They were stolen from me. They were awful. You know, I had, a stillborn. I've had miscarriages. I had a doctor who did a forced abortion on me against my will. I've never really been able to say I have felt safe while pregnant with a doctor. And, it's going to take me a while to process like everything that you just said, because it's so good. And I think that's like specifically what I'm going to pray for, this time around. Because, my whole thing, is like doing the midwife for so long, then going and switching to a doctor. And yeah, that was just so beautiful.
Yeah, I would just encourage you to like ask God to go ahead and prepare a room for me. Go ahead and prepare the right surgical team for me. Go ahead and prepare the people that are supposed to be on my birth team and the people that are supposed to be in the room. That is such a huge thing that I think we take way too lightly, of the literal humans who are there witnessing the birth of your child, the beginning of a new life. I mean, that is powerful. I don't want just a bunch of random nurses in there that I don't know, which nothing at all wrong to nurses. I completely and totally respect the job that they do.
Yeah.
But that is a huge privilege to be in a room. And that's why I think it just goes to the wayside of just another job, of just, I'm just a nurse at a hospital, or I'm just an obstetrician, or I'm just a midwife, or I'm just a doula. And I found, especially in the midwife and doula circles, it's held with more, it's held sacred more often.
Yeah, like reverence.
But there's reverence around that. But, like, I feel like that really needs to be like something that we change as women, to say, no, I'm going to hold you accountable to the fact that this is a sacred space that I am inviting you into.
Yeah.
And if you cannot be respectful of that, then you can kindly leave. And you don't need to be here. Because 99.9% of the time, they don't need to be there. So, I mean, our bodies know what to do.
Right.
And obviously, in the case of a cesarean,
it's different.
Which I love the fact that you have just, like, gone to God with, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah.
And he shows you that. And that is totally fine. And that's why I gave the disclaimer in the beginning of, like,
yeah,
if that's not the path that you want or need, that is totally fine. But regardless of that, like, even the nurses and the doctors that are going to be in the room with you when you deliver the sweet baby boy, like,
so
this
weird.
is still, like, God working through their hands to bring him up. Like, that's incredible, and that's sacred, and that should be held with so much reverence and respect.
Yes.
For you and for Matt and for the girls that he's going to be welcomed into, like. So I just feel like there has to be kind of a culture shift around that of, this is not just another day in the office. This is incredible.
Yeah.
But I think that just kind of has gone to the wayside with just how our society views life in general, which that could be a whole other episode.
Oh my God.
But
me on my little soapbox.
Yeah, we don't want to go down that road today. But yeah.
No, that's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, you have the next question.
Okay, so I'm gonna read it. I am newly pregnant, and I had a traumatic birth with my first baby, and I'm terrified to give birth. Ooh. How do I go into this? Do you have any advice for me?
I am your lady.
Yes.
With my oldest, I had a Pitocin-induced 36-hour labor. And the Pitocin was on 10, people. 10. So that's like transition labor for 36 hours. Because on the sonogram, they insisted she was over 10 pounds. I know. Looking back here, I'm like, if only I was educated. But, I was really, I mean, for me, this is young. I was like, I think 22. And I just wasn't as educated as I thought I was. I read what I believe now to be outdated books, whatever. So, of course, that resulted in an emergency C-section. And then with Gemma, I went to my 6-week appointment after Gia, and he told me, you're pregnant. So, I always joke. I mean, it was 100% me. It was my hormones. Matt looked like a piece of meat. I was like, hello.
Dude, I can relate. I don't know how people...
I was just like, oh, my God.
People think I'm crazy, but I'm like, I was counting down the minutes. And also not listening to the rules either. So,
I mean, I did not listen to them rules. I was like, I had a cesarean. That's not real. And, well, Gemma came. And so, of course, I had just a scheduled cesarean because, they tell you, like, you're too close. It's too close being pregnant to not have another. So then, a few years go by, and of course I had Giada, which I talked about on your podcast, and how traumatic it was to have like a uterine abruption and then a forced stillbirth with her. And I tried to have a home birth, and then it was incredible, and then just went south. And then I went, and of course it was the doctor that was the reason I had a home birth, because I didn't feel safe with her. She ended up breaking Giada's neck, and she died. And then, gosh, I think is there 4 years? I think maybe 4 years difference between the birth of Giada and then Pearl. And then Pearl, my crazy ass mother-in-law, put me into labor. with her psycho antics. And I basically tried to stop the labor by myself because she did this at Christmas time. When Matt was doing all of his finals. So he wasn't able to be with me, and it was awful. I was by myself. I was in pain. I was terrified. And so this birth for me this time around, it's scary because I'm like, God did give me a vision of a baby with his hands setting a crown upon the baby's head, and then it said redemption in jewels. And so my advice would be, take time, ask God, and be like, God, give me some kind of hope that I can hold on to, because I'm not going to lie to you. I've been real sick for pretty much, who finds out they're pregnant at like 4 weeks? Me. I'm like, ugh. But pretty much like up until, like 7, so for 3 weeks, every night I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I just had this fear, like I'm going to lose this child, like this baby is not going to make it. I'm going to have a miscarriage. I'm going to whatever. And I literally had to put Psalms 91 on and just get in the word and be like, God fights for me. He's my protector, and when that happens, my soul feels okay. And so my thing is like, turn to Jesus, ask him, let him give you, take away your fears from the enemy. He wants you to have, a redemptive birth. He wants to place the specific people in your life. Like how you said, pray for every single thing. Get yourself friends who will sit and be in agreement with you. Pray that God brings people to support you and to love you through this. Because the last thing that he wants is for a child to be born in a place of fear. And it sucks. Because let me tell you, I have had to fight. Every single kid that I've had to fight for them. Fight for the choices, fight for, what I believe in. And yeah, that's like my advice is like, just, and nothing. Like, think how we are like towards our children. We want the best for them. We don't want them to suffer. We don't want them to go through things. That's how God is with us. And when our kids come to us and be like, Mom, do you see, like, I really want spaghetti for dinner. Like you want to give them spaghetti for dinner. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. All these things that are so big to us, God wants to give us those desires. Yeah. So,
and the closer we grow to him, the more those desires align with the desires that he has for us. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yes. So, I definitely think like the first question, how you answered it, and then this, like, I hope that you feel like empowered and feel like, that you can have that support.
Yeah, you are so worthy of having a beautiful birth. And
yes.
Like, God wants that for you. And I feel like I go back and forth sometimes because, yes, I did have a traumatic first birth, but God allowed that to happen. And I've been able to use that story. And then the redemption of my second birth, of that home birth. Like,
my dog's driving me crazy. Dolly, go lay down. All I hear is her nails.
I know.
Like click, 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 click. Sorry for whoever's listening if you have a sensory issue.
But just like God was able to use that second birth, and like as I've been able to use that as a testimony now of like, I sat, and to what you were saying, like I sat with God so much during my second pregnancy, and I was so scared. And a lot of times it would come in the middle of the night, which that's like when spiritual warfare is the worst for me.
Oh, 100%.
When those spiritual beings are just absolutely after you and getting in your head.
Yeah.
And God does not give us the spirit of fear.
Yeah.
But of power, love, and of sound mind, of self-control. Yeah. And one of that aspects of like the self-control is to say, no, I'm not going to be sitting in this fear. I'm not going to think about this anymore. I'm going to have the self-control to say, we are going to redirect to something else, because when you focus in on it and that's all you think about, it truly does become real for your body. Like there's a reason why the aspect of manifestation works, because it is letting evil come in and truly like be present, because you're thinking about it all the time. But that's why God also like warns us about that and says like, that's not what I want for you. I want you to come to me so I can show you exactly what you're supposed to have in this situation. And so to that, also being really careful about who you invite to speak into your pregnancy and who you share things with, because that trauma can just continue to like double in on itself, and it can get so much worse. And so I was extremely choosy about who I let to speak in to my second pregnancy, and sat with Jesus a lot and with other women who were just willing to pray over me and help me work through that trauma so that I could go into my second birth without the weight of all of that in my head. But there were certain people that they would remind me of, oh, well, this happened with your first, so why would you be at home? If that happened with your first, you don't handle birth well. Those are not words you want spoken over you going into your birth. You don't handle birth well. Like,
That's satanic.
Absolutely
I'd be like, not today, Satan.
Absolutely not. So I was super careful with who I shared my guest date with. I was super careful about who I invite to speak over any aspect of it. And we didn't tell people when I was in labor. Like, there were like a few people that knew, but that was it. Like, only people who were going to be praying over me and Holden were allowed to be welcomed into to that knowledge, because I wasn't having it any other way. You don't need anything else speaking over. Like, you want only truth spoken over you in that experience.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. Okay. We are on our last question. All right. How do I become a better advocate for myself in birth and as a parent for my children?
Ooh, don't be afraid to get loud.
Yes.
Like I said before, start with a good provider if you can. Also, something I've been trying to work on is like the verbiage around that. So not like, I don't really have a better word than provider currently, but like they're not your end all be all. They are simply there to support you in the choices that you've already made. So making sure that you're getting fully informed consent, not rushing anything. Like 90% of the time, these decisions don't need to be rushed. Whether it's vaccines, whether it is induction, whether it's even having a cesarean. Most emergency C-sections are not actually emergent not necessary. If they are not immediately taking you back to the OR, like immediately, if all of a sudden they like have said you need to have an emergency C-section, like we got to get you back there, and then they're all taking their sweet time getting back there, it's not an emergency.
No.
It's not an emergency. I could go so much deeper into all the technical aspects of that. I won't for the sake of time. But know that you can always say, hey, I need
time.
I would like, come back in an hour. Come back in 15 minutes. I'm going to discuss this with my husband. I'm going to pray about this. I'll let you know. Or what are my other options? And that's where, if you had a good provider to begin with, they will not have an issue with that. If they have an issue with that, then it's either because like sometimes we think that it's because there's actually an emergency, but most of the time it's because they're getting to the end of their shift. They're tired and exhausted and just being human, because that's what happens too. Or they have other factors influencing them, and I won't go into all of that either. But
they're being bribed by pharmaceuticals.
But I just want to say, like, you always have a choice. Now, one thing that I love that my midwife talks about is taking radical responsibility. And that means that if you are accepting this responsibility, that there might be a bad outcome to making the choice that you are making. And that is where relying on God for wisdom comes into place.
Totally.
Because I had a friend that did the whole home birth thing, went to the hospital, the whole thing happened, and her baby actually did need an emergency C-section. She needed to get out right then. And God gave them the wisdom to say, you know what, actually scrap all of this. Let's go and do this. And it was a life-saving measure. And she was so glad that she listened to God. But I've had a lot of friends on the opposite side of that it was not necessary, and they endured so much more trauma. I mean, it's major surgery.
Yes.
It's not something to take lightly. And so I don't even remember how I got to all of this, but I just would say, like, get loud.
Yeah.
Be willing to say, I'm going to take responsibility in this moment. And if something bad happens, then so be it. But I need some time to think about this and to make sure that my body feels safe and okay with this decision, and that this is what God is telling me to do, and that I'm not just making a decision out of fear. Because you can make a decision out of reverence for the moment, but you do not need to make a decision out of 100%.
Fear.
So I would say that, and then be willing to make sure that you're on the same page with your partner. Like, you don't need to be walking into your this is even with kids. Just, you don't need to be walking into your pediatrician's office and be on two different pages about what you're doing for your kids. Like, make sure that you're on the same page before you even go into that office.
Yes.
That's, again, choose a good person. There's other options outside of just regular pediatricians. If that's
I thought
not
you
how
were talking about a husband right now.
Like,
choose a good person.
Choose a good husband.
Make a wise decision on that man.
Yeah, these are things that me and my husband discussed even before we got married, of like what I wanted for my kids. And I'm gonna be honest, we were not on the same page with a lot of things. And by the grace of God, he changed his mind on things. Like, God showed him certain things and revealed things, and he changed his mind, and now we are on the same page.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of arguments, unnecessary arguments about things and anxiety on my part of, like, I don't know what's going to happen when we get to this age and he's supposed to be getting X, Y, and Z, because I'm not comfortable with that. But thankfully God changed his mind. But get on the same page with your partner. I feel like that's really important. And just know that you have options. That if you're in an office, you don't have to stay there.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in an office and they're trying to force you to do something, you can leave. Like, try not to get yourself in the position to begin with, but you are always allowed to leave. You are always allowed to walk out of that hospital. You might have to, you don't even have to sign their little form that you're leaving against medical advice.
Oh,
that's for them. That's not for you.
Right.
And that's not, like, you are allowed to walk out of any building. You cannot be held hostage. And honestly, it gets really complicated when you have babies, like, in the NICU, because they can hold them hostage. And I could go into all of that. I've also lived it. I wish I would have had more support. It was 2020. Nobody could come in the hospital to support me. And so I ended up signing a form that said that I was not mentally well, so that they would not discharge me before my baby was getting discharged from the NICU, because they were literally holding him hostage because of a decision I made that they were not in agreement with. Yeah, they were not happy. I gave in to the decision. He immediately had after effects. He had a seizure within 15 minutes of having the vitamin K shot after I had already signed a form saying no. The doctor came in and said he's bleeding from his brain and he will die if you don't give him this. I re-signed the other form. They gave it to him. He had a seizure 15 minutes later. Then they immediately took him to the NICU, and within a few minutes, another nurse came in and said, I explained what happened, and she was like, oh, he wasn't bleeding from his brain. I don't know why he told you that. And it was because he was mad. And it was total, like, there was admittance on all sides after I'd already had, like, actual birth trauma from another midwife in the room. Also, look up the difference between a CPM and a CNM, please, because they are not the same.
Right.
I'm like, sorry, I'm just like, all of the advice.
Listen here.
Get loud, get bold. I wish I would have never signed that form that said I was mentally unwell. I wish I would have just said I will not be discharged until this baby is in my arms. And I do not have to sign a form that says I am mentally unwell.
Right.
And they made it sound like that's your choice. So you either sign this or you stay in the parking garage or you drive an hour home. Like, they wanted me to sleep in a parking garage.
That's insane.
2 days postpartum. So, yeah. I have a lot I could say about that, but just do not be afraid to go to God to make decisions. And to get loud and to ask for bravery and to ask for the perseverance, because sometimes it will be really, really hard. But God will also give you the wisdom if you are in that scenario, and he will give you wisdom if you go to him beforehand of how to hopefully avoid those scenarios, because they are often avoidable if we just say, no, this is not going to work for me. I'm going to leave now. They can't do anything. They really can't. So.
And like, also like praying for courage.
Yeah.
Like having courage. You know, oh my gosh. It's like, I feel like it's so hard for us as society to stand up to people in authority. I mean, and I can go down the whole rabbit hole of why this is. Like, you know, we're told to go in school, sit there for 8 hours, be quiet, listen to your teacher. She's the all out end all. Don't question authority. Don't whatever. I don't know why my dog eats so loud. My God. She's like licking her chops. But at the end of the day, there is literally legislation that has been put into effect in the 80s where your doctor is not responsible if something happens to your baby.
Yep.
If something happens to your baby and your child is injured, you are responsible to take care of that child for the rest of its life, not the doctor. So you need to find that little Mila, that little Riley inside of you and stand up for your child with informed knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, like
there's the pharmaceutical companies cannot be sued for any effects that happen with the vaccines.
Yes.
Like all of these things, like let's just get real about it. Like it is our responsibility to deal with all of the after effects. And more than just that, we have to stand before God one day and account for every single decision that we make for our children. Like, these are not things to be taken lightly.
In everything.
Every aspect.
You know, so it's kind of like for, you know, me and my husband, we both have MTHFR.
Yep.
I couldn't believe when I was fighting for Pearl, how many doctors and, you know, people who were in residence, because I was in a teaching hospital, I literally went back to the hotel room that I was staying at and made packets because they thought it was fun to send people in to argue with me about what they deemed was necessary for Pearl. I just ended up making packets and handing it to them and being like, here are scientific studies that support my decision.
Yep.
You know, and not everybody
Which,
sits
FYI,
around.
you don't even have to do that.
Right.
Like, that was very kind of you. Because I have been in that.
Sick of them.
I've been in that scenario before because I have MTHFR too, and so do my kids. Reasoning why Hayden had the seizure and why I had already decided not to do it, and went back on it. And I really regret that, but it's fine. God has forgiven me. I've forgiven myself. It's fine. But you don't even have to do that. Like they are not. You don't owe them anything.
Right.
And as women, we have this mental concept that we owe everyone an explanation for everything. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Just say no. No is no. We tell our sons, no means no. The same goes for everybody else.
Yep.
No means no. And you don't have to tell them.
Yep.
Why? So my prayer for you is to have courage to, you know, I constantly pray in so many aspects of my life, not just with the restaurant, with everything. Like, Lord, give me wisdom, give me knowledge. You know, I realize that not everybody has insomnia and reads legislation and scientific studies because they can't sleep. Like, I'm not normal, but
same.
I'm like, you know, I'm like, but the thing is that this is why we surround ourselves with people in our lives who will help us and who will be our advocate.
Yeah, you need information. I got it all in a folder on my laptop. I will have it over to you in minutes.
You know, but pray for God to bring people like that in your life. This dog's driving me crazy, but I think it's because we're sitting on her couch that she has claimed as her own, and she's like doesn't understand why we're sitting here and she can't come here. But and like, you know, if your heart's desire is to have a doula, but there is no financial way for that to happen, pray for God to make a way. Yeah. Girl, pray for a miracle.
Get you a friend. I just had a girl on my podcast a few weeks ago talk to me about this, because we were talking about maternal care deserts and like the lack of options for people. Doulas. Like what did we used to do? We used to just show up as women who had given birth and support our friends.
So true.
This is not 2020 anymore. You don't have to have all these certifications to walk up into a hospital with your friend. You're allowed to have anybody you want.
I love that.
Grab a friend. I will be your friend. Like,
will you be my friend?
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be, if like the finances aren't there to have a trained and certified doula, which is great. Those skills are amazing. I'm not discounting that at all.
I wish everyone could have one.
But, like, you do not, like, if you just need someone to be there, grab a woman who you know is going to be there for you, who's going to hold your hand, who is going to pray.
Advocate.
Who is going to help advocate for you. Yes, who is going to say, hey, that nurse is doing something that you did not want her to do.
Yeah.
And get loud about it because you're literally pushing. Been there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, I'm just saying, like, you don't have to have someone who's actually certified if you don't have the finances to do that.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I just like, I just want everyone to feel like so supported and to just have the most like beautiful birth and beautiful experience, you know? And I think that when you do have like traumatic births, like your heart is so softened and so tender towards like the pregnant woman and you know how beautiful and like what an incredible time it is for them. Like their life is literally about to change, like totally in one day, you know. So gosh, this was so good. We got so passionate.
I know.
And fiery.
Like, hopefully I'm not like busting out the mic.
Hopefully I didn't offend 700 million people. But I mean, either way, the beauty about being people and, you know, is that we respect how each other feels. And, you know, if you have an opinion that doesn't agree with mine, I don't care. Like, I'm still going to love you anyways and feed you. So, you know, is there anything else that you want to add?
I don't think so. Just know that no matter where you're coming from, no matter the kind of support that you do or don't have, you are enough. God is going to equip you to do the job of being the mother that you are about to become.
Beautiful.
He is going to hold you through this, and if you just lean into him, it will be a completely life-changing experience. It's going to change your life either way, but like when you do it with God, it's just so much sweeter. And those nights when you're up leaking and sore and just trying to learn this new human, you are not alone because God is there with you. Like your husband might be really annoyingly snoring next to you
with his useless nipples.
Yeah, but God will hold you through that, and like that starts in your pregnancy. Like if you lean into that in your pregnancy, it completely changes the whole journey through birth, through postpartum, all of it. So I really just encourage people to just lean into Jesus because he can, like, I don't know, he can just transform the whole thing. Yeah.
Miracles on miracles, baby.
Yeah. It's
so
amazing.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for watching, listening, looking at us, being crazy. Thanks for just being here with us. I'm going to remind you to click the likey, click the subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. What am I missing? Facebook. And like anywhere that you like to listen to a podcast.
Yes.
We are here for you to advocate for you, to love you, and kind of yell at you. So anyways, thanks for coming. I love you. Tanti Bachi.